Ever feel like you're spending half your day just moving data from one tab to another? We have all been there, stuck in the copy-paste loop when we should be doing the actual work that matters. Today, we are going to break that cycle. We are diving into N8N, the powerhouse of workflow automation. Think of it as the central nervous system for your tech stack. Unlike other tools that box you in with monthly task limits or rigid structures, N8N gives you the key to the kingdom. In this session, we are going to see how N8N is used, how to build actual workflows, and how to deploy N8N in different ways. Let's get started. Before building automations on N8N, let me show you how to deploy it. So there are various ways to deploy N8N, which includes just going into the N8N website and get started. Once you created an account, you can start building automation workflows. But the thing is, even though the pricing of N8N website is monthly based, we are allowed to perform a limited amount of executions in these plans given. But there is a way to deploy your N8N automations online with unlimited number of executions with monthly or annually based pricing. First, you need to go to any of the cloud service providing platforms. You need to add a new web service, go into the existing image option and paste the Docker image URL of N8N in this section. You can search on the internet, then connect. You can choose a region. Here you can choose this instance type. I'm going to choose the free plan. The free tier of render grants 750 hours of free instance to each workspace per calendar month. It also spins down a free web service that goes 15 minutes without receiving any inbound traffic. Also, waking up takes approximately 1 minute or more time. Databases are deleted up to 9 to 8 and high traffic or API heavy apps may face suspension. The free tier also does not provide persistent disk storage. And there are other limitations too, which you can read from the render docs, and then you can deploy the web service. After deploying it, you will be given a link by the render, which will navigate you to the page of N8N where you can start building the automation workflows. You can also host N8N locally in your computer. Generally, localhost N8N for practicing, and you can also do it for free. First, you need to download Docker Desktop in your computer. After that, you need to run the desktop for once. Then go to the command prompt and type this command. After that, run this command, which creates a volume called N8N data, which is crucial for data persistence. Then you need to run this command to run the N8N container or simply localhost N8N in your computer on this particular port. If an error is returned which says port is already allocated, you can change this particular port number to another port number which is not occupied by any other application. After that, you can access your locally located N8N by navigating to the URL, which will be localhost colon the port number you selected. Now you have to set up the owner account. After you created an account, you can get the build features for free forever by using a license key, which will be sent to the email with which you created your N8N account by clicking on this button. After you have got your license from the email, you can navigate to the settings, usage and plan and click on the enter activation key button here. Enter the activation key. I am going to use locally hosted N8N throughout this session. Let's start with the actual building part. Every automation has workflows which execute a certain logic to get the work done. You can create a workflow by clicking on this button. You can store multiple workflows in a folder. Also, you can create a data table which can be used to store list execution rates, share data between workflows, and track metric evaluation. An automation workflow is built by creating connecting some entities called nodes. There are multiple types of nodes in n8n. One of them is the trigger node. As the name suggests, a trigger node starts the execution workflow when a certain event occurs. For example, when I click on this trigger manually node, it is put into the workflow like this, and on clicking the execute workflow button right here, the workflow starts executing. Multiple trigger nodes. There is on a schedule trigger node which triggers workflow at certain intervals. There is a webhook trigger node which triggers the workflow when it receives a HTTP request. You can configure this webhook trigger node by changing the HTTP method, setting an authentication, and you can also change when the response would send back, such as response can be sent back immediately as soon as node executes or when the last node finishes. Actually, when you select this option, the data of the last executed node will be sent back as the response. You can also send the real-time data while each node is executing. Also, you can use a separate node called respond to webhook node to send a response in the defined node. Let me tell you the difference between the test URL and the production URL. When you send the HTTP request to this webhook using the test URL, the workflow will be triggered only when the webhook is listening. When you click on this button right here which says listen for event, the webhook starts listening the HTTP request to it. You can click on the stop listening button right here to the webhook stop listening to the HTTP requests. The production URL, the webhook listen to HTTP requests incoming all the time. There are also many other webhook trigger nodes such as on form submission, when running evaluation. There are also other ways a new email is received, IMAP, email trigger, and web trigger. Also, a workflow can trigger under workflow too. A workflow can also be triggered on certain app events like these ones. There is also another node called on chat message. The workflow is triggered when a user sends a chat message. This is used AI nodes which I will explain later. You can also have multiple triggers to trigger the same workflow. Next, I am going to show you the nodes in the category flow. The if node evaluates conditions. Let's take an example by setting a mock data in previous node of the if node. You can set mock data by clicking on this. The data is in the JSON format. If you want to deal with data in a n8n workflow, you need to learn how JSON format works. Let me just give you a glimpse of it. Here, both of these separated by commas are items. This is the first item and this is the second item. Name and code are different variables which store data. The first one is the name is a string and you can identify it through the double quotes right here. The second variable, which is the code, is an integer data type which is storing the integer 1 right here. Similarly for the second item. Now if you go into the if node, on the left side you can see some data. You can visualize data in three different formats, which is schema, table, and JSON. Schema format is the easiest one to understand and the easiest one to use for beginners generally. Now I am going to show you how to evaluate a condition. For example, if you want to pair the name variable of each item with another string, you just need to drag this name variable from here to the value 1 and click on this drop down. As we are evaluating condition for a string, we need to go into the string section and to select which says is equal to and write a value in the value to which you want to the name variable. For example, I want to compare it with one. I'm going to execute this step, and now the in the false branch right here, as no variable name is with the string 1 from both the items. If I want to compare the name variable of each item with the string first item, you can see the false branch has one item, which is the item which has the name variable not matching to the string first item. And there is another item in the true branch whose name variable is matching with the string first item. The data in the true will flow in one path of the workflow, and the data in the false branch will flow into another path in the workflow determined by each branch. Next is the wait node. I am going to just click on this plus icon right here, emerging out of the true branch, and go to the flow option right here and scroll down, and then select the wait node in here. As the name suggests, it just waits for the next node executed. At the wait amount, you can select the wait units such as seconds, minutes, hours, days, and also there are different types such as at specified time. You can select a date and time at which workflow should be resumed. You can select webhook call option which resumes the workflow when a HTTP request is sent to the webhook URL which is generated at runtime. You can select on form submitted option which will resume the workflow when a form is submitted whose form URL is so generated at runtime. Now, if you want to send a message and wait for response, you can do that in some applications such as Discord, Gmail, Google Chat, etc. You may execute these. You can also do many actions in many apps in n8n to direct nodes. Obviously, I cannot explain all of them right now, so explore these on your behalf. Next, what I'm going to explain is the switch node. We can use if node instead of this, but it makes it simpler if you want to split data or items into different paths based on conditions. For example, I set a mock data in the trigger node and I set up in the switch node such that it splits the items based on their names. I added the first routing rule which says if the item name is first item, send the item in one branch. Otherwise, if the item is named the second item, send it into the branch 1 and add an option which says if none of them matches, send the item to another branch which will be the fallback branch. Now I executed the node, and as you can see the output 0 has the first item and the output 1 has the second item, and the fallback 1 has no items in it. Now, what if I change this into something else like, yeah, this, and execute it again? You see, now the fallback has the item which is named the first item and not this. As you can see, we have three separate branches which are 0, 1, and fallback. There are also another few options which says ignore case, and we can also rename a fallback output to another name. Also, we can rename other outputs as well, and we can also send data to all matching outputs. This means if an item satisfies more than one condition, it does something like duplicating the item and sending it to the sub branches whose conditions match the item. Now, if you want something custom, you can also define an expression in code, and you can also enable this to convert types to an required. In next one, I'm going to discuss about is the filter node. As the name suggests, it filters data. For example, I send the same mock data, and if I want to filter out the items which have the name first item, I can define a condition like this, and when I execute it, I will get the matched item as the output, and the other items will be discarded. There is also another property we can add, which is ignore case, which ignores the capital and small letters. Next is the execute sub workflow node, which executes a sub workflow. We can choose the workflows from the list here. I have another workflow in here, which I can choose to run in middle of this workflow. The source can also be changed. You can define it in JSON or it directly picks from the database. There are also two modes which says runs once for all items, which means it just gives all items as the input and the sub workflow just runs once, and the other is run once for each item. Let's say we have 5 items, the sub workflow runs 5 times, taking each in item as an input. There is also a property which says wait for the sub workload completion. Just enable it if you want your workflow to wait until the sub workflow completes. You can also throw an error in the workflow by yourself, which requires the error type and the error message if the error type is error message, and if the error type is error object, it requires you to mention an object. Next is the merge node, and the name suggests it merges data. It also has different modes, which is the append, combine, SQL query, and choose branch. The append mode outputs the items in a form of array, taking an item one after another. You can choose number of inputs here. You can choose out from 2 to 10. The combine mode merges matching items together. There are multiple options here to choose. There is combine by, which have the following options. Matching fields position all possible combinations. The matching fields option lets you match items based on a field such as code, name, etc. If the fields to match have different names, you can also mention it by enabling this, and it will ask you the input field names. You need to mention the fields to match here. And the output type also matters. You can keep non-matched items separately and matched items separately. You can only keep matched items. There are also separate concepts called inner join, left join, right join. You may already know them if you can code in SQL. You can also keep everything. There is also an option which says output data from, which you can select how output should be. If you want output data from both inputs merged together, output from input 1, input from input 2, you can do it. There are also multiple properties here which we can explore. There is another option which says position. You can combine data based on their order, or else you can pair two items, or you can get all possible combinations of two items, which is said as cross join, using this option right here. The another more is the SQL query. If you can write SQL, you can do You can customize how your data should be merged. You can also output data from a specific branch without modifying it by using this mode. Now it comes to the data transformation. First thing we are going to discuss is the set node. The set node is used to set variables. Variables are like things which store data, just like the name which stores the string first name and code which stores the integer 1 right here. There are also two modes in here. First one is the manual wrapping and the second one is the JSON. The manual wrapping is user friendly and the second option lets you set variables using JSON. Let's go with manual wrapping for now. Let's say we want to name a variable 1 which stores the code and execute it. As you can see, there are two items which has the variable 1 which is set to 1. And this is a string because we use the string data type right here. There are two items right here because we are passing two items as the input in here, which are first item and the second item, which is already set in mock data. There are also two properties in the set node, which are ignore type conversion errors and support dot notation. We can also select which input fields to include. If we enable this and choose all fields and execute this node, we get the two items for which each item is appended with one variable. If we select all except and mention, let's say, code field, we will now get name and 1 for each item and the code field is excluded. And we can also select some of these. Let's say we want to only select the code field as input. Now if we execute it, we get code and 1 as output for each item. The next node is the datetime node. Date and time node, which allows you to manipulate date and time values. As you can see, there are multiple nodes in this category. You can also implement these with the code node, but date and time node is usually user friendly. Now comes the code node, which lets you code in JavaScript or Python. You just need to do some code and to return some value as output or some array or an object or any data type. If you know coding, you can do much with any 10 workflows using the coding node, the code node. There are many other nodes which limit, which if you pass some input with items, it will just take 3 of them into consideration and it will just take some number of items into consideration and pass them only to the next node. The split out node turns a list into separate items and the aggregate node turns set of items into a list. And there comes the summarize node, which lets you do some more things which you can also do with the code node, such as counting, concatenating, average, append, max, min, sum. You can go through it, but the code node is there for it, but this summarize node is user friendly. And there are other nodes which lets you convert data. You can compress and decompress files or convert JSON to binary data, or which you can say a file. You can edit an image to some extent. You can work with HTML, extract the data in file. to JSON, convert data between Markdown and HTML, and then comes AI nodes. There are multiple models here, and each type of node for each model has a specific purpose. For example, in Google Gemini, you can analyze audio, transcribe, recording, you can perform file actions, image actions, text actions. Let's say we want a response just like a normal text from the Google Gemini. So we can use the message model node. You can create a credential by using an API key for Google Gemini, and also you can choose specific model after creating a credential with the API key. In this drop down, you can add prompt here. There are two types of prompt, which are user and model, or you can say the model prompt as the system prompt. The user prompt is something like which a user asks generally to the model, and the system prompt is like a set of instructions of how and what the model should respond with. Let's say you want a response from Gemini about how to cook, teach, give the basics of cooking. The user just asks, teach me the basics of cooking, and the system prompt should be like, give the response with specific tone, personality, in this structure, etc. There are also multiple options, but here the system message for execution, maximum number of tokens. You can also set the temperature, how much creative AI should be, etc. You can also choose if you want the output as JSON or not. You can also connect the message model node with tools which are init, calling init and workflow, code tool, HTTP request tool, etc. etc. You can explore the other nodes, but there is a specific AI node which is used to manage multiple things at once, which is the AI agent node. For the AI agent should work, there should be a trigger of when chart message received, which triggers this workflow when a chart message is received in here. It actually charts with a user. It has memory. It can use multiple tools such as it can call anytime workflow tool, code tool, HTTP request tool, etc. It can also have a knowledge base which can be set up custom. You should choose a specific chart model right here. You can also enable fallback model. If one model fails to give a reply, another model is used. If I enable this, you can choose a fallback model right here. You can also set up a memory. Let's set up a simple memory right here. You can choose the context window length, which is basically how many past interactions the model can remember, which is done previously. There are also several options here which enable streaming, batch processing, etc. In conclusion, this node is used to achieve some big task through AI rather than just minute tasks. There is a concept called drag, which you might want to implement in your workflow. Think of standard AI like a genius who graduated from college 3 years ago. They are smart, but they don't know what happened in your meeting this morning. RAG changes that. It's like giving the genius an open book exam. Instead of guessing, the AI looks up the exact facts in a database before it speaks. You might wonder why not just retrain the AI on our data. There are two reasons: cost and accuracy. Training is expensive and takes weeks. Drag, it is instant. Upload a document in Google Drive right now. The AI knows about it 5 seconds later. It eliminates hallucinations because the AI must cite its resources from our files. Now, how do we achieve it? User asks a question. The RAG AI agent doesn't just answer immediately. It uses a retrieve documents tool to retrieve data from base, find the most relevant chunks of information, brings them back, then combines those facts with the user's question to produce a grounded, factual response. We also use Postgres chart memory so that the AI remembers the conversation flow. Now let us explore the actual workflows to implement the RAG in N8N. The first workflow is to add the Google Drive file to the vector database. There are two triggers in this workflow. The first one, file created. The second one, file updated, which means when a file is created or updated in Google Drive, this workflow is triggered. The mode is set to every minute, which means it checks the Google Drive once every minute. Next, the set node is used in here, which sets the file ID according to the ID in the input that has been sent from Google Drive to this workflow. Next, the database deletes the rows which is related to the file which is updated. It identifies the row using the file ID. Next, it downloads the file from Google Drive by identifying the file ID. Next, it extracts the text from the and finally it is inserted into the database. The document data loader here obviously loads the data and this text splitter which splits the character text recursively. And here OpenAI is used for embeddings. The second workflow is used for building the AI agent which charts. This workflow is triggered when the user sends a message. You can open the chart in here. The chart model which is being used here is OpenAI. As I explained before, this is the press chart memory. And in this tools section, you can add multiple things such as code tool, N8N workflow tool, HTTP request tool, MCP client tool, and you can use vector tools in here too. There are also some other tools that you can explore on your behalf. Every project we build needs a workflow which triggers when an error rises any other workflow. First, we need an error trigger in the workflow. We have to build a workflow such that it informs us whether in a mail or Discord or Slack about the error arise, which involves several parameters like at which node, which workflow, etc. This is a default output that comes from an error trigger which contains ID, URL, retry, off, message, last move executed, etc. You may find this default output in editing docs. Let us say we simply want to send a mail to ourselves when an error is triggered. You can set this up by using an mail node which is set to operation send those as message, which email does the message will be sent, subject, message, email type, and there are other properties listed here. For the credential, you need a client ID and client secret, which I am going to simply show you how to get these two values. First, you need to log in into Google Cloud using the email from which you want to send the error message from and create a new project. You need to search for Gmail API in this search box. Gmail API. Tell this and you will get an enable option right here which you have to click on. Then you go back and click on APIs and services. Then go to auth consent string and in the audience section, then scroll down and add a test user, which will be your email, which you will in the email come. Go to client section, create a client, Application type will be web application, and whatever you want. Now you have to add a authorized redirect URI, which will be in the N10 where you create a credential. Right here is the OAuth redirect URI. We want to copy, now add a URI and paste it in here. Now you have to create OAuth client ID, and from there you will be able to copy and paste the client ID and client secret and log into your email. You should create a credential through which you can send an email automation.